The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Welcome to the Influencer's Edge. This is the place where you come to get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques to leapfrog over the pack in sales, persuasion, and influence. Be sure you visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now sit back, tune in, and enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Influencer's Edge. I am proud to say, I think it's August 9th. Is it August 9th, guest? I think it's August 9th or 8th. This podcast has been globally ranked in the top 10%. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it. We've been going for about 2 years now, 2.5. And my mommy and daddy, wherever they are right now, would be proud. So our guest today is Kimberly Harris. I wanted Kimberly on the show. We get a lot of guests applying, but when my producer, Tracy, sent me her application, I wrote back, yes, exclamation, 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 because she talks about some very, very crucial things that are going to touch all our lives, namely grief. And we're going to get into it with her. So let me read your bio, Doc. And I'm going to go yada, 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 where I think I should go yada, yada, yada. Dr. Kimberly Harris. Well, let's stop right there.
Harms, by the way.
You?
Harms.
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 Sorry, Dr. Kimberly
That's all right.
Harms. I'm sorry. Dr.
Right.
Kimberly Harms. Okay, as my mother would say, are you a doctor, or a dentist?
I'm a dentist.
You're a dentist. Thank you.
I'm a dentist.
My dentist does a terrific job with me. He pulled out all my amalgam fillings and the mercury things and put in something else. I don't know if it's BS or not, but that's what he did. You have been around the block in life. You served as a commissioned officer in the United States Public Health Service. Do you get, I'm not being funny, I'm serious. Do you get a uniform with that, like stripes or?
Yes, there is a uniform for public health. It's a branch of the Coast Guard.
It is Semper Paratus.
There you go.
Not everyone knows that. A dental school professor. So, wow. So amazing. A grief counselor, a death doula. Now, I know what a birth doula is. A birth doula is not the same as a midwife.
Right.
So what does a death doula do?
A death doula helps people navigate their road towards death. Just as a birth doula kind of helps the mother get through the birth, a death doula helps navigate the way through death. We can provide emotional support, legacy planning, help with whatever the person needs. We're not medically trained, so the medical care is separate. We just help them emotionally get through the death process, and the families as well.
Wow. Okay. A big accomplishment. A civil mediator, a clinical dentist with her late husband, Jim, in Farmington, Minnesota. Let's see how I got that. A school board chair president of an international women's organization, the first woman president of the Minnesota Dental Association, a national spokesperson for the American Dental Association, international speaker. How do you deal with the fact that everybody hates dentists?
Well, they don't. But what we try to do as dentists is, because there's so much PTSD out there, especially with baby boomers like me, we weren't really treated well as kids. We work very, very hard. In my seminars that I would speak all around the world, were on how to manage pain and anxiety and grief and conflict. And when you get those down, you can find a dental office that works very, very well and which can control the pain or anxiety that the patients have. So
Have you ever learned hypnosis as a modality for dental anesthesia?
actually, I have not, but I know people that have used it successfully, but I have not personally done that.
Yeah, I've done hypnosis for over 35 years. I've seen some weird and interesting things. One of my sisters had her child with no anesthesia other than hypnosis. The mind is a very interesting thing, isn't it? You are
Yeah.
a best-selling author. Name of your book.
My book is Are You Ready? How to Build a Legacy to Die For. And I also wrote some widows books, some Christian widows devotionals. But this is the one that I've written most recently that's it's pertinent to the topics we're talking today.
Now, you just said a magic word that means different things to different people. So let me hit the pause button that I warned you about during the green room conversation. What do you mean by legacy? Do you mean millions of dollars in the will? Do you mean I will my art collection? I have my father's collection of World War II postcards he sent to my mother from France and Belgium as his unit moved to liberate the Netherlands.
Wow. Well, that's all part of legacy. It's all part of legacy. But the legacy I focus on most closely is the emotional legacy you leave to the people that you leave behind. And I really truly believe that a legacy is developed in every single interaction you have with another human being. You're developing your legacy. And that's what I really mean. But I do talk because the goal of the book is to help us prepare the next generation for after we go. When my husband died, I realized, oh, I'm next, and I want to be next because I lost a child too. So, I don't want that to happen. So
Oh,
I'm
pause. You can't, with all due respect,
okay.
Kimberly, you
Mhm.
can't just I don't want you to, as a host and as a human being with a heart, to say I lost a child and just go right through it. I cannot. My parents lost my sister. Well, I lost my sister too, and in 2003, and then they declined rapidly.
Mhm.
My mother never cried. My father wept like a baby. My mother held it in. That was her style. But they both declined precipitously after that. So, are you willing to talk about that? Or would you rather skip?
Absolutely. No, everything is on the table because our legacy is helping other people get through their lives because we've been through these experiences. And it was absolute. I just want to give you a hug and your parents, I know they're gone, but a hug as well
I
because
don't think they're gone.
oh, they're not. Okay,
They're
good,
gone physically, but I don't think they're gone.
good. Um, it completely shatters your life, your whole view of the world, everything you ever knew. My son Eric was a golden boy. He was this amazing, never gave us any trouble, just amazing kid all the way from the time he was born. He was recruited by Columbia University. Like who gets recruited for their engineering program? He was a jazz pianist. He was a brilliant, brilliant pianist. And he got to Columbia and he was elected to student government right away because when he campaigned on what he would do and refused to denigrate anybody else. This just gives you an idea what kind of kid he was. And he made it into the jazz program, which was jazz in New York City. I mean, come on, this is the top of the world. He was in some plays with the Barnard students, so he had trouble. He had fun doing that, and he was in love. He was in love, and he
Oh,
came home
wonderful.
he came home from the very first, his very first semester, completely on top of the world. He even made the dean's list his first semester in engineering, plus all that other stuff, right? So, like, who does this? This is just who does this, right? Well, he went back to school, and 2 weeks later, his girlfriend broke up with him, which is a normal thing of life, right? Normal thing of life. And
Happens to the best of us, and sometimes it's a gift.
yeah, but he was gone in 45 minutes. That impulsive jazz pianist brain that he had, very impulsive, and the fact that his brain was not fully developed, he was 19 years old, couldn't comprehend that breakup and probably maybe had trouble accepting a failure because the kid just didn't fail at things. And he was gone in 45 minutes. And our world was shattered.
He took his
Took his
life.
life. Yes, he took his life in 40. And my mother also took her life. So this is a
Pause.
family thing.
Let's
Yes.
pause for a second.
Yeah.
Tracy, we're pausing at about 10 minutes in.
Yeah. Yeah. I go,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on the air. I just had a brief discussion with my guest and expressed I don't even know what I would call it, the emotion, but I can't imagine how were you able to eat or function or
No,
sleep or
no, we couldn't eat, sleep, couldn't read. I mean, it's really like being a zombie, like you're completely dead on the inside. And I heard some things with your parents that I just want to embrace because I grieved differently than my husband. Um, he would go into my son's room and sit every night. And I couldn't go into that room for 3 years. 3 years I couldn't step into that room. But something happened, and we had two daughters too, and something happened to me. And you mentioned this with your parents who just declined right away. A couple of weeks, we finally went back to work, which was extremely difficult. As a dentist, I live in a small town. Everybody knew who Eric was. Everybody knew us. We were in a small town. And as a dentist, I had about 10 patients that I would do the treatment with, but then I had the hygiene patients I would check, right? So every time for about 6 months, I would come into contact with someone who would want to say, I'm so sorry about Eric, which was wonderful, but it was emotionally very difficult 20 or 30 times a day to go because you're trying to kind of get into work mode and that brings you back into grief mode and deep the pit of grief with your barely a nostril kind of sticking out. But something happened which was amazing, and that was I was walking out of my office one night and my husband was standing with a cousin of his, and it was probably maybe a month after Eric died. And I was in that zombie mode, you're just, okay, I'm done with the office. And you're just kind of walking out. I walked out of the office and he came up to me, wagging his finger at me, the grieving mother, right? He was wagging his finger at me and he said, don't you ever let your remaining kids feel that they are not enough. And it was like, whoa, and it
who
hit me
said
like,
this to you?
this is my cousin, my husband's cousin, who had lost his brother at 18 and felt that his parents had died too. His parents fell into that grief pit, which is a natural place to go, fell into that pit and stayed in that pit the rest of their lives. And he and his sister felt that they no longer had parents. And he was warning me, and it was one of the most wonderful things anyone could do to me because nobody else could say this. Nobody else. I had to just kind of startle back at what. And I realized at that moment, my husband had just had a liver transplant. He had had liver cancer and he just had a liver transplant. So
My
he was,
mother died of liver cancer.
here we
That's
go.
what got my mother.
Yes. And so he was struggling physically and emotionally. My daughters we were a very close family, are a very close family, was struggling emotionally. And I realized that I had to fight and kick and scratch and claw my way out of that pit because it's a deep and dark place.
I understand.
And I realized at that moment I had to do it. I had to do it. It took a number of years. This was not an easy thing to do, but I just kind of focused with the goal in mind of joy. I want to get to where I can be joyful again. And you feel when you're at that situation with a catastrophic loss that you're never again going to have any joy in your life, that your life is dark and you just can't see
Which is
beyond.
what your son felt when he took his life.
Yes. And I've been at that place myself. I've been there myself. My sister and brother were both there about the same age. It's kind of in our family. So, I just had to work through that. And it took a long time. So it's not an easy thing. But I have to say that I have managed to get to a point where I now have my two daughters who were never going to have kids because Eric was the only one that wanted kids, right? So my two daughters have between them 6 kids. I have three children apiece. And so I am a grandmother now. And I was afraid to be a grandmother at first because it was like, I can't love there's a small circle of people. I can't lose anybody else. I can't love anybody else. I just, it was too much. But I realized that I had to get out of that pit and I had to get out of that shroud. So you get out of the pit first, and you got that shroud over you of grief, where everything's covered with that. Yeah. Had to get out of that, worked hard. And now I can tell you that I am 100% there in joy with my grandchildren and my children and the people around me. And part of the book and part of it is describing that journey to joy from the depths and how it's possible. It's hard. It's not easy, but it's possible
What
over time.
were, so what are, I'm not going to dishonor you by even beginning to ask for techniques, because I don't believe this could possibly be about techniques, but what were the milestones for you that let you know, wait, I'm starting to make progress here? I just have to share from the heart. I should not do this as a host. I should just let the guests talk, but I will share with you that my mother was the first death I ever experienced.
Mm.
And for about 2 months after my mother died, I had grief brain. I could not put sentences together. I couldn't think. I was stupid. I lost 50 IQ points.
Mm.
Do you understand what I'm talking
Oh, it's
about?
completely, completely. My youngest daughter was in her first year of law school and she couldn't read. So there you go. She just happened to have someone that after a few months when she could kind of start getting herself back and could bury herself in the library, she had one law professor that said she would give her the class over the summer so she could drop one class, focus on the others, and get over the summer, which was such a blessing and such a gift because she couldn't read and she was in law school and she had to perform. She had to take tests. I mean, you remember when you had grief brain, how could you take a test because you can't remember what happened 2 minutes ago? So yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
what are some of the milestones that you had and that the people who you've I don't even know what to say, counseled, talked to, coach, trained, whatever. What are some of the milestones that let you know you're beginning to make that journey and some progress on it?
Well, I had two big ones. The first one was a year after Eric died. Now, remember, my husband is sick. He's practicing a couple days a week. Luckily, we'd sold half our practice, so we didn't have quite so much pressure. But I was working full time. I was working 2 days at our practice and 2 days up in northern Minnesota. And I was a main breadwinner for our family. And I discovered 1 year after Eric died that I had nerve damage in my drilling fingers,
Ooh.
which I'm done. I went to Mayo Clinic. I had pain on my neck. My fingers didn't feel, my neck was bad. I had pain in my neck. They discovered I have nerve damage in my drilling fingers and said, oh, you're done with that career. And it was like,
But other than that, things are fine.
it was like, what the heck, right? It was like, whoa. So after that, I had a little time on my hands. So after that, I decided to become a grief counselor because for some reason, I felt that would really help me. And so during that time, as I was studying to become a grief counselor, I learned of something. We all know the Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. I think most of us are familiar.
Which I think is only a model. I don't think there's necessarily science to it.
Right. But there's another guy that I just attached to, and his name was Warden. And he had
Can you spell that?
Warden. Warden's tasks. I like tasks because I'm like a linear thinker.
Yeah.
Tasks of mourning. Warden's task of mourning, and I don't know
Wow.
why people don't understand this, but he said the first task is to accept the loss, which by the way is Kubler-Ross's last task. Accept the loss. Okay, you have to accept it happened, and you don't for a while. You wake up thinking like, okay, was this? Oh my goodness, this really is the nightmare. This is I want to go back to sleep. I can't accept this. Your brain just can't process, right? Accept the loss, process the grief. Oh, that's a bad part. That takes a long time, but process, you have to get through it. I kept wanting to wake up in 20 years like Rip Van Winkle and think, okay, now I'm fine, but you wouldn't. You wake up in 20 years, you'd be just as bad as you are now, right? So process the grief, then adjust to your new life. You have a new life and a new identity when you lose somebody really
Right.
close to you. And so you have to
Exactly.
adjust. Okay, this is my new life. I have 2 children. I don't have 3, but it's hard to adjust to that. I mean, it's amazing the numbers, how that works in your brain. And then finally, and this is the goal, because I like to have a goal that I can work for, right? It's you find an enduring connection to the one you love. And I found those. We have 65 libraries in Rwanda, Eric Harms libraries in Rwanda. Find an enduring connection with the one that you love so you can live on your new life fully with that connection. And the connection doesn't have to be 65 libraries in Rwanda. It can be in your
Wait,
brain.
I don't understand what you said. Pause. 65. So you created 65 libraries in Rwanda and named them after your son?
Yes. Through Books for Africa, which is a great
Wow.
organization to work through. And
Wow.
but
It's a
here's the
very
thing.
Jewish thing to do, by the way, to create things. And are you Jewish?
No, but hey, my book has got a number of Jewish people in it that describe some of. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I have a Holocaust survivor that I still talk to. She's still alive. She was just a child in my book. She's a chapter on resilience, the legacy of resilience.
Oh,
So
yeah. We're a
I have her in
people. I
that.
come from a very resilient people.
Yes, yes, yes. She has just amazing story. But the thing that Rwanda, so I had the grief counseling, and then when I went to Rwanda, I have to tell you, if you ever want to find a people, a country that has used grief to reinvent themselves into something completely different, it's Rwanda. They had this horrible genocide 20,
Yes.
30 years ago now.
The
I went
Hutu and
Hutu and the Tutsi. The
the
Tutsi were
Tutsi.
the ones that were being wiped out.
Yeah.
And I went there 16 years after the genocide the first time. So, but in 16 years, you wouldn't believe the progress they were making. The killers were still in jail. So you'd be driving down the road and there'd be a long line of men in pink jumpsuits, walking along the road. And when I went there and I told them why I was building this library, it's for my son that I lost, and they of course had lost their entire families. They surrounded me. I felt love like you would never believe. Most unbelievable thing. And what I learned from them, and I get goosebumps when I talk about this, what I learned from them is that they decided to have justice. They go to jail for 20 years, justice, but then to forgive and reconcile and bring them back into their communities.
It's
How do
what
you
they
do
did in
that?
South Africa as well.
Yeah,
That's
they did. And Rwanda has been so successful. If you look at it then, and then you look at it now, it's got the US State Department safety rating of 1, which is the same as going to Canada, I'd like to tell people, which is the highest safety rating. So if you're not afraid to go to Canada, you shouldn't be afraid to go to Rwanda.
I don't know. As a Jewish person, there are parts of some cities in Canada I don't know
Well, there you
that.
go. They might need a higher rating because Rwanda is very safe. And I go there by myself. I go there by myself many times. I just fly there, find a hotel, go visit my libraries, and then they come home. And but they're by meeting these people, they were able to do that. That helped me to realize it was humanly possible. Because when you're in the bottom of that grief pit, you think it's not humanly possible for me ever to get out of this place, or certainly ever be joyful. But I found joy in Rwanda despite all the things that had happened to them. So that was for me, that those things
What
were
a
the most.
crazy, I mean, crazy good. What an unexpected story. You probably, when your children were all with you, probably never thought, I'm going to go find deep meaning in Rwanda. You
No.
probably, it was the last place you would ever think of going.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought my husband and I were we have bought a property up on a lake. We were gonna go up there and retire and, spend with all our kids and our grandkids and have the grandchildren. And of course, he's gone too. So I just sold the cabin. I mean, so it's like, all the things that you think you're gonna do can blow up into smoke. Yet you go
This
on.
is such a, see, when I hear everything happens for a reason and blah, 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 to me, I get what people are saying, but on the other hand, it is the trivializing of human courage and the chaotic aspect of life and the frailty of life, that things don't always happen for a reason. An airplane can fall out of the sky and smush you totally at random. And was there a period when first of all, I don't know if you're religious or not, if you want to
Yeah,
discuss it or not.
I'm a Christian, but I believe in God, and I think in my book kind of talks about it, however you see God, if you see God, and if you don't see God.
Was your belief shaken by this, by losing your son? Do you mind me asking these
No,
questions?
no, 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 no. That's a good question. No, no, I don't. Nothing's off the table. Everything's on the table because
Okay.
this is important for people to be able to talk to someone that can tell you the truth, what comes from your soul, right? Interestingly enough, now I lost my mother. I was shaken. I couldn't eat or sleep. My husband, I think, struggled a bit, but for whatever reason, I kind of clung to my faith to get me through this. My belief is that my relationship is between God and I. Jesus is in there too, but it's a one-on-one kind of a thing. And I got a lot of encouragement that I was going to be okay. And I got a lot of encouragement that I had a, a purpose in my life. It was not at all a purpose. I was going to practice dentistry and retire at the cabin, right? None of that happened. Everything fell apart. Um, but what helps me through my faith, and again, we all have different faiths and believe in different things. It helps me to feel that I have a purpose, and I'm going to try to be as positive and joyful. And if you talk about the Bible, in the Jewish Bible too, the joy of the Lord is your strength is in the Old Testament, so there is almost like a commandment to be joyful in all things, which is very difficult to do. And you can't talk about that like right after a trauma, but maybe 5 or 10 years later, you might be able to figure that out. So that really helped me kind of in my battle for joy, because it was a battle. And I also like to have I also like to have someone to fight. I mean, because I'm kind of a bit of a fighter. So having Satan out there to fight, I wake up in the morning, and I'd be all low and down, and I'd just say, okay, Satan, you're not going to get me today. I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to be fine despite you. Just get out of here. So now whether that's, whether that's truthful or not, I don't know, but it worked for me. I kind of had an evil force to fight,
I think we have to turn to what it is that works. I turned my phone off because it was ringing, but and I'm just sitting here processing all the things you said because they're hitting home for me. As I said, we didn't discuss this on the air, but I have a brother who's very slowly and painfully dying from cancer, and I shouldn't make this about me.
No, please. I think sharing is great. Please, please, please.
I will share with you that I have many times thought I would rather he go now quickly and without pain and without shame than just continue on with absolute torture and no life. And then sometimes I feel guilty about it. Like, how is that right to even think that way? But the truth of the matter is that is how I think. And I'm going to get flack. Fuck all of you. I'm now in the top 10% of podcasts globally, so I don't have to worry about any of that is how I think, because I think it would be a mercy for him to go. I just do.
And my husband chose hospice, which meant he could have stayed alive. And one of the things I talk about in my book is all the things you need to do really to kind of help your family. And he had a healthcare directive, which is so important. And he
Yes.
put out, I do not want to go in a hospital. Do not put me in a hospital.
Yes.
And that was so helpful for me because he knew he wanted to die at home, and he died comfortably. And because we were in hospice, he died comfortably and at
Yes.
home and peacefully. He actually died twice, but that's another story. He actually died once and stopped breathing for 20 minutes and came back for a day, and we had a party, and then he died. But he gave me that gift of not having to second guess, because we all have different views about death and dying. And so we want to make sure that when our time comes, that people can honor our wishes. And when we do that, we prevent them from having side discussions about what the best thing was. I mean, we have some physicians in the family that on that extra day that he got between the 2 times he died, called up and said, well, why don't you go back to the hospital? You can get intubated.
Yeah.
And he was like, no. I said, no.
Completely there with you.
Right.
And I said, when my mom passed, I said to my siblings, this is going to bring out the best of us and the worst of us, which it did. The worst in us and the best in us, which it did. This is I'll share something because it'll set up a question I want to ask you. When one of my sisters is convinced that she communicates with our mother and father frequently, that they visit her. I've never had any messages, nothing, zilch, nada, except for one time at my father's burial. I absolutely felt his unlimited loving presence. I was there at graveside about an hour early to think. I felt it palpably. And then nothing, as if they'd never been here. So I'm going to dive further. What's your personal belief about this? And do you think that the human do you believe that human consciousness survives after the physical body goes?
Oh, absolutely. I 100% believe it. And my book kind of explores different beliefs on that topic. Certain percent believe in life after death, a certain percent do not, a certain percent believe in reincarnation. My personal belief is that I will be able to see my husband and my son and my mother, again. And interestingly enough, in our family, my husband got a lot of those more than me. I was a little jealous a little bit sometimes after Eric died. I got one time, it was shortly after he died, and I got, it was the phone rang, and I picked up the phone and I said, hello, and he said, hi, Mom. And if you're a parent, you can tell from the tone of the voice of your child how they're doing. 2 words is all it took, and I just felt, okay, he's in a good place. My husband had more dreams
And
that
that
were
was his voice.
his voice, hi, Mom, and I felt it was real. I mean,
I've heard of these things before, and right now the hair on the
yeah,
I've got
yeah.
goosebumps, and the hair on the back of my neck is standing up.
And my husband had several. My both of my daughters had very vivid dreams. And he was like, one time he was wearing this suit jacket, and my daughter said, I don't know why he's wearing a suit jacket. And I said, he got that suit jacket right before he graduated, and she'd never seen it. And she described that suit jacket. And but then the most incredible part for me was I had 3 people from 3 different areas. One was a fellow student at Columbia. One was a high school friend who was down in New Orleans. And another one was one of my nieces who was a nurse at Mayo. And all 3 of them, and it came over a period of 3 years because my niece was afraid to tell me, but she told me when my husband was in surgery once, they all had the same dream that Eric came to them, and he was known for his jigs. He was a very happy, joyful kid, and he was known for his big jigs. And they said he came to him in this white, wearing kind of white and shiny, doing a jig. And they told him, please tell my parents it was an accident. And it kind of was. They were people, he was calling for help. There were people trying to save him, and they didn't, it all went wrong. But he said it was an accident. He said, I'm fine. And it's nothing you could have done. It's not your fault. All 3 of those people from 3 different places came and told me about the exact same dream. And so I believe in that stuff.
Did
Everyone,
it flip you out?
well, the last time it was wonderful. The third time, which was my niece, my husband was in surgery, and he was
Oh,
having he had before his liver transplant, his heart had checked out really well, because you don't get a liver if your heart's bad, right?
of
So his
course.
heart was great. Well, 6 months later, Eric died, and then a year after that, he was in surgery for quadruple bypass surgery and a valve replacement, and it was supposed to be a 4-hour surgery, and we were on hour 9. So she came in, she was a nurse there, it was at Mayo, and she came in and she goes, I wasn't going to tell you, I don't know whether I should tell you, but I just think this is the right time now. And when she told me that, and we had, my daughter was there, and we had some Jim's
What did
sister.
she tell you?
She told me that story about how well, I had this dream, and he came to me and he did the
Oh, the
jig.
nurse told you that.
This was my niece
Oh,
who was
your
a,
niece.
yeah,
Okay, I thought you
he
said
just happened
nurse.
to be at
Yeah, I get
Mayo.
it.
So she told me that story for the 3rd time, and it was just like, oh, okay, it's gonna be okay. And we go on. I feel that. I feel there's more to life than just this realm.
I
That,
sure hope
yeah.
so.
Me
I
too. I mean,
sure
hey,
hope so, because this is a pretty screwed up world.
yeah, yeah. And we don't know until the time comes. So we'll find out. Right?
Listen, I feel I've in some sense done you a disservice because we haven't really dove into the technical details of what you do and what you teach and I have no apologies to offer for that because I think this is a real human to human, heart to heart conversation. I think it's why people rank the show so highly because we don't always get famous guests, but the interactions that I have with guests are very elevated and are not the typical, oh, really? And how did you get into this? And why are you still doing it? And the rest of it. I really, it feeds me as a human and my sense of purpose to be able to have this kind of conversation that really is honest and is, for some people, will be scary to listen to, but I think it's important to listen to. Um, Kimberly, I know for a fact my audience will want to stay in the conversation with you. So how do we do that?
Well, if they can just go to my website, which is Dr. Dr. Kimberly, Kimberly Harms, HARMS.com, drkimberlyharms.com. And the book is Are You Ready? How to Build a Legacy to Die For. And we delve into death, we delve into grief, we delve into dying, and we have a workbook at the end that has all the stuff you need to do so that you don't have a big conflict with your family, after you die. You get everything in order before you go, so they're not in conflict after, because 57% of families in the US have conflict surrounding the loss of a loved one. So that's my goal, is to reduce that.
I'll tell you a story off the air. Wow. I'm actually going to cancel some of my afternoon errands and just sit and think about this episode. It's giving me stay on with me because there's just a few things I want to discuss. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Influencer's Edge is never boring. Sometimes we have guests who piss you off. Other times we have guests who puzzle and confuse you. This time we had a guest who I think has challenged my emotional core, and I hope challenge yours. And also I hope it's my wish, whatever you want to call it, that it's given you a start to find a roadmap to navigate your own grief, which life is. I'm a Jew who also practices some aspects of Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist, but Buddhist teaching is life is interwoven with suffering, and which means grief is going to be a part of it. But here we go into philosophy. I think we've had enough today. Thanks, and we'll see you next time in the Influencer's Edge. Stay with me, Kimberly. The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Thank you for tuning in to the Influencer's Edge, where you get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques so you can leapfrog over the pack in sales, influence, and persuasion. Remember to visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com to enjoy even more great episodes like this one. We look forward to seeing you again on the Influencer's Edge Show.